right, I got everything hooked up.
Okay.
I don't know why that is such an issue. Sometimes, so many little gadgets. Who knows what I have on? But I want to welcome Carolyn to my home. Carolyn is with Alzheimer's Arkansas, and she deals with education and outreach, and she does an incredible job.
Thank you for having me again in your home, Theba. This is one of my favorite places to be. Like, I can't wait to get here. So thank you again for having me.
Well, and you're always so patient because Carolyn and I wanted to do this outside because it's spring and it's beautiful, but it's windy and the sun started to set, so it got a little chilly. So we don't get anything set up till we know where we want to do it. And we're actually shooting video of this as well for YouTube, so we have a different background.
Yes.
And we just thought, the chimes were going off, which I don't mind. But who knows what would happen. The wind's kicking up a little bit. So most of you know that Carolyn comes on once a month, and I pick her brain, and we talk about a specific subject. I shot her an email, and I said, what do you want to talk about? And so
what did I say?
Well, I can't remember. It may have caused me a little consternation, a little anxiety, but not really.
I want to talk about you, Theba.
Oh, well, yes, then it did cause me a little consternation and anxiety. So I'm just going to let you take it away. I'm just going to check and see that everything's recording as a distraction.
As a distraction?
Yeah.
So the mission of Alzheimer's Arkansas, and I think my lead role is to care for caregivers. So as important it is for you to take care of your loved one, our organization takes care of the person taking care of the person. So I'm often worrying, concerned, checking in, and that's who I provide services to, the caregivers. So every now and then I see a glimpse of your Facebook page, right. And
I try to be extremely vulnerable on Facebook.
You are very.
I have so many followers, and a lot of them are dealing with this, so I want to keep it as real as possible.
Yeah, so when I see it, I'm like, how is Theba really doing? So I was like, I really want to check in with her because I seen a post and I saw that you recognized that your mother is having some progression. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to check in on you to see how you are handling the progression. I know this year you retired, so you're at home more.
Well, it is, my second year to be
Your second year
home.
To be exact. Mm-hmm. Life is changing because I think the first year is, I would say, maybe a bit easier because of COVID. The world was still kind of shut down a little bit.
Yeah, maybe. And it was easier. It was weird. I embraced it.
Mm-hmm. But the second year now?
Yeah, so second year. I'm getting older. Mom, this year, the changes, and I may have mentioned them at the beginning of the year, I can't remember, but she doesn't want to leave the house. We would do a day trip. I called them day trips, but it was really, 4 hours, maybe, if we drove somewhere pretty. Mm-hmm. But I tried to get her out of the house once a week to maybe shoe shop, go to Dillard's, have some lunch, keep it real short and simple. But, for her, like an hour was like 4 hours. And she let me know that she, which I was grateful for, the last time we were together, she indicated in so many words that it was too scary out there. Too many people, mm-hmm. The cars scared her, and that she did not have to go out. And I was like, thanks, Mom, for letting me know that, because I don't have to go out either. It was just something I wanted to continue to do for her to kind of keep her engaged. But that type of engagement, even at my age, is too much. Too many people, too many cars, and crazy, right? So always when there's a change like that, even though I can say I don't want to be out, because I really don't. I don't have to go to dinner. I have friends I can go to dinner with. But to me, I'm registering a change. I was pretty sure that the next change would be that she wouldn't want to go on walks anymore We would just take one trip around the block.
Mm-hmm.
I saw that coming, but since this was a significant decision, one day we went, probably the next week after she made the decision of not wanting to go to eat or go shopping, we started walking, and she acted like she didn't feel well. It was her leg, then it was her back.
Mm-hmm.
It's always something like that. And so I'll quiz her. So we got about 4 houses down, and I just said, well, that's okay, Mom. If you don't feel well, we don't have to walk. Okay, thanks, Theba. And I really knew that was the last time. So the next day when I just said, I'm going on my power walk. Okay. So it's not something that she wants to do, feels the need to do. It was obvious that she wasn't enjoying it. And so I just came to the conclusion that away from home, even if it's in the neighborhood and down the street, is still too scary for her.
Okay.
So I had some emotion with that. It's always those weird, unexpected, and I don't know until a couple of days later, and I go on a walk, and I'm processing it, and I get teary-eyed about it. And then I adjust, and all is well. I certainly don't want to force her to do anything she doesn't want to do, so I made it a non-issue. And so that was the first adjustment, or those were the first 2 adjustments. Then I noticed that she began asking me very specific questions about this house that she's lived in for, I guess, 48 years. Mm-hmm. Was I born in this house? Was, just all different questions. And just the other day, we were in the kitchen, and she wanted me to know that she was, and these are my words, but this is my perception of the conversation, she's growing less familiar with this house. And so at the time she was looking out the back window, and I said, so when you look out that window, is that backyard familiar to you? And she said, no, not really. When she said that, it didn't register an emotion in me at that time, and to be honest with you, I don't know that it had a concern for me as far as the grief aspect of an adjustment. I don't know that I've adjusted to that yet, or because even today we're still having questions about this house.
Okay.
In any case, I know that your concern is like how I'm doing. And, just to, of course, off mic that, I've suffered depression since 16. Mm-hmm. Used to have terrible bouts of anxiety. Of course, I'm much older now, and I've learned to deal with it.
Coping skills.
Yes, I take antidepressant. I have a good therapist, but Jesus Christ keeps me tucked under his arm during those times, and I really lean in, cling to him. So I know that since I have, for you ladies out there, I've been enjoying several years now of menopause. I know hormonally I'm all over the place. So I just started this year taking some hormones, progesterone and estrogen, whatever, to see if that would help. But I can tell, and I was honest with my brother about this. I texted him, and my anxiety's right there on the surface. So I could tell that anything, could cause me a panic.
Yes.
Now that Mom asking about the house was not a panic at that moment. But even today, she's in a phase of, she's very animated in asking questions. She's very curious. This morning it was, she did not remember her dad. Mm-hmm. So I got a picture out, and she looked at it. She goes, I remember him being older. So there's some changes. Those are, to me, those are very significant. I have noticed just a slight frustration with her, and not so much at me, but like she couldn't get the sheet on her legs properly, covering them because she was chilly. And she got quite upset with that sheet. That's different for her.
Yeah. So, in the frustration and the changes, and I know you power walk, and I know you see the changes. So, how do you take care of yourself in all of this, and how do you not feel grief and guilt? Because I know you're going to feel. How do you manage it? Let me use a better word.
Well, for instance, when she made the decision not to go out anymore during the week and not to go walking, on my power walk, as I was praying and talking to God, and I cried. And because it's easier to go on a cry on the walk than try to find some place to hide in here and cry, because you don't want to cry in front of her. So that's telling me that I'm kind of flushing out some of that grief. And I'm okay with that. I've been there before. I had to do it with my dad and my mom, usually, and that was during the same time when they were diagnosed. So I spend a lot of time in prayer, as you well know, but I'm doing a lot of studying, and something different that she's doing, that she and I are doing together, is I'm reading the Bible. So also, we have eliminated some what I consider unhealthy distractions, such as the news, because she gets so immersed and sad when she sees things that happen, like the tornadoes and stuff. So I got rid of cable. And that's to kind of keep me out of seeing a lot of it. I get online to kind of get the idea of what's going on in the world, but then I got to get away from it.
Yeah.
So how am I taking, I know you're asking, how am I taking care of myself? First and foremost, just staying so connected with my Lord and Savior Jesus, and staying in constant communication. I talk to him all through this house and when I'm in the backyard, and as you know, on my walks. Not working and not being overly distracted helps me not be surprised by some of her changes. They're not so shocking, like at the very beginning with Mom and Dad, because I was working, I was so distracted, and everything was a big shock. And again, being okay with the fact that it's going to have an effect on me. I just don't know when. You know, is it going to be when I go to sleep at night, on my walk? To be honest with you as well, when they do happen, I know that that's when my anxiety level gets right to near the surface. And I have to then be very conscientious about that, and know that anything, the cat could jump on me and scare me, and, you know, I'm like, ah! So I'm aware of that. So it's more at this point of me just being aware, first recognizing changes, knowing that they're affecting her, but also not ignoring the fact that they're affecting me. As you well know, I do my podcast here, so I get to have people come to the house and visit, and most everybody that comes here I know, because I've had them on the podcast several times, or I've met them at an event or something. But also, as I mentioned, I had two of my girlfriends come over yesterday, and they went on the power walk with me. That can't happen every day because, you know, they've got their busy lives, but not shutting myself out completely, which
That's
is really easy to do.
But important not to do, but easy to do.
It is easy to do, especially when you suffer from depression and anxiety, because you just assume nobody wants to be around you. Or when you do have a good friend come over and you need that adult time to have a conversation with them, you're anxious on whether or not they're going to be okay with you not being okay. And I've got some friends that are okay with me not being okay. But still, it's difficult, because when you suffer from depression and anxiety, I have mentioned that it's right there on the surface, you think they know. Like, you know, most of the time, as of the last couple of years, we've seen people who've committed suicide, and people are like, but they seem so happy. They're just smiling all the time. I would have never known that sort of thing. So, unfortunately, you can put that out there, But for me, I just feel like they just know, like I'm really sad, or that, so the healthy thing is a friend who's been my friend for 20-something years, who knows me very well, comes over once a week for dinner, and I feel completely vulnerable. Like 2 weeks ago, she just looked at me and she goes, "How are you doing?" And I just started crying. I had a family member I was concerned about. Mom was changing. I was hormonally challenged, so I wasn't doing well, and I didn't have to pretend with her. So I do have friends I don't have to pretend with, and that's key. And I try to always be as honest with them as possible, even if it's in a text that, "Hey, I'm not doing so good."
And I think we have been conditioned to say we are fine and okay and everything's all right. It just comes out of our mouths so easy, right? How are you doing today? "Oh, I'm fine. I'm okay," even when we're falling apart. So having those people that we can just say, "It's not okay. I don't know what I'm going to do at this moment," is very important, because it allows us to like process our emotions and our feelings. And I feel you just made a statement, and I feel, and not always, but a lot of people that I know that deal with depression, they are the ones that always seems to look like they're smiling a lot.
Yeah, and I know I do that a lot.
Yeah. So it's that outside appearance, but on the inside, like dealing with a lot of things. And you're projecting that because you're trying to keep your mom happy too. Like you don't want to look sad around your mother, because she's gonna feel that and pick up that emotion. So taking care of yourself and not giving up everything of Theba, like who Theba is important in keeping your identity. I've talked to a few caregivers, because after this journey is over, where is Theba going to be?
Oh, I think about that.
Because your identity is here now.
Yeah, no, it is going to be a transition that I'm not naive about. It will be because of my love and affection for her. It's going to be difficult. It is going to be challenging, but I know that I'm not alone, because Christ is with me, and how he has navigated so much of my life, and it's very evident and obvious, right, for me and my testimony. I'm depending on him and his grace at that time. So it's just like when my dad passed, and I wasn't as close to my dad. I mean, we didn't have a strong relationship, but I was committed to caring for him to the end, because he was my father, and I knew that God wanted me to honor this process. And I loved him. I may have not liked him very much. And I knew that even though I wasn't as connected to him emotionally as I am my mom, I still had to face and deal with the transition. But my favorite part of any transition like that has been being able to see very specifically how God has given me grace and mercy and guidance through it. I know that's going to happen with me and my mom, but it's going to be more intense because of, we're best friends, we're best enemies, everything. It's my brother and I talk about it often, and the reality is that in this world, no one escapes from having some trauma in their childhood because of parental decisions, and we both have had to deal with that. They don't go away just because your parents have Alzheimer's, but since they can't do anything about your healing, that's where therapy comes in, and you have someone to talk to. That's where staying connected to your friends and not assuming that they don't want to be there for you just because of how you feel. Because if I feel off, I just assume nobody wants to be around you, and that's the lie of the evil one. But boy, I can almost buy into it really quick. Like
It is so easy. And one thing that's said about this disease and caregivers, like they're so isolated. And I often think about that. And even caregivers question the isolation part of it. And
yeah,
it's twofold in many ways. I would say number one, if we looked at the person with the diagnosis, is we're not educated and we don't know how to deal with when we hear the words, right? Dementia, Alzheimer's. Most of us do not know how to interact. We're afraid, and when we're afraid of something, we shy away, right? So that's an important part of it. And we can try to, and we can't change people. I had this conversation this morning. As caregivers, advocate and educate our family members, our friends, and allow them to come around, right? And even share some of the moments that are gifts to us, if that makes sense. Because most of the time, what we hear are the tragic stories of Alzheimer's. We don't hear about the stories or the things we learned that we never heard about, but they like share stories. I know you've probably heard some things from your mother that you didn't know prior to.
Yeah, today she was very focused on a woman that she knew her name was Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
And Ruth flirted with her dad, and that caused all sorts of problems between her and her mom. And she was really focused on that story. Now, I'd heard bits and pieces, but I was curious for more, so I just listened.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, but this is what was different about that story. She goes, I just heard Mom and Dad fighting all the time about Ruth, and they stopped playing cards and inviting them over because of it. And I was glad. She goes, but I cried every night. And that's something different that she's never shared, the emotional effect. You brought up something, and I've, since being on TV and starting my podcast, and I've always been pretty much an open book on Facebook. And that's where most of the majority of my followers are, because they have either dealt with Alzheimer's
mm-hmm.
in their family or are dealing with it because of my peer group
mm-hmm.
is on Facebook. And the question that I always ask myself or just I think about is I've always shared the fun times with Mom, the walks, the funny things she mm-hmm. says. And now I'm making a transition to share the uncomfortable mm-hmm. Because I can't, it's... You and David Cook have been so good to me and challenging me in different areas of my life when it comes to this disease. And every time that you've issued me a challenge, I've taken it.
Yes, you have.
But I'm always saying and I'm always understanding that if I cannot be vulnerable on all aspects of it, then where's my ministry?
Yeah.
If I trust God in this process, now I always want to honor my mom and be respectful. And I want to share our story where she has dignity because she doesn't know what I'm doing. So I always want to be sensitive and respectful to that. But because I've always put on a smiley face and a fun time, and my job was about that, doing fun stories and having fun out there and being goofy on TV. I know that it's going to be more difficult for me to be as vulnerable when things aren't going well, but I'm doing it.
I saw it. I seen one post, and I don't even think, sometimes I can't handle, I know some people can't probably imagine this, but sometimes I have to manage my own emotions. So I work with a lot of caregivers, so I have to learn to manage my own emotions. So I couldn't even read your post, but it was like the first part of the sentence, and you just said that you noticed the transition, and it broke my heart. Like, I could not finish like the rest of the post. And I felt your words. And I was like, how is Theba doing? And it was just like a different communication. Like, I just interpreted that different than I had a lot of your other posts.
Well, and you've gotten to know her because the last couple of years
And
you've been
you.
over here,
Yeah,
and me.
and
well,
you. So it was just like,
we're buddies, we're friends, we're
Yeah.
sisters now.
Yeah.
There's no doubt.
So I was like, how is Theba doing? And making sure, and you have a tribe of people, and making sure you rely on them and your support system to just be vulnerable. And like, I love to hear that you cry. I tell people all the time, like, cry. Like, you have to let those emotions out, because it's tension and anxiety, and crying is one of the best therapies that we have. No, it does not fix things, but it relieves pressure. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I was just sitting there thinking, first of all, thank you for sharing that. Because I do get random, and it's from people I haven't really connected with in a long time or know that well, and I'll get a Facebook message of them saying how much they appreciate what I share. You just never know, right?
Mm-hmm.
You and we talk often about just being a testimony to God's goodness and grace in our lives, and just being able to do that. And we don't know where it'll fall. We don't know what seed it'll plant. And I would say that I would not be being honest if I did not say that I worry often about how I'm going to do it, how I'm going to finish this out. I want to finish strong. That's my goal.
And you will.
But on those days, right, where I am feeling, I told my brother, sometimes I just feel as fragile as a butterfly. Like, and then some days, it's like everything else that in life we're dealing with, then there's some days I feel really strong. And it's a roller coaster. And that's life for most everybody, whatever they're dealing with, job, raising children, I understand that. But if I'm going to be the best advocate possible, then I have to be honest about the difficult times. But also share the fun times. Like, I shared a video the other day because my mom's always had a great sense of humor and funny, but boy, if she gets to laughing, that's awesome. So I think she questioned who I was for a minute, or she was praying. That's what it was. And she was looking out the window, and she said, something like, "Thank you, God, for Theba and I's relationship." And then she looked over. She goes, "That's right, isn't it?" And I was like, and she just started laughing. And then that was it. Then every time she kicked into another part of the prayer, she would remember how funny that was. Then something else was funny. And so it was a beautiful time of laughter and hearing her laugh and me laughing. So, I can handle those times a lot better when I'm feeling stronger. And if they happen in the morning, I feel like sometimes, especially at my age and with menopause, I go through my own sundowners. Meaning, like, at 4 o'clock, I get so tired. Used to be 3 o'clock. Then, it's like it just hits everybody so different. But I get real tired. So not only physically am I tired, my thinking, I'm just, do not test me. Don't throw anything dramatic at me, because I feel like I can't deal with it. And I just need a good night's sleep. So I feel like that happens at night, and in the morning I'll wake up kind of groggy. But once I'm up and I know it's a new, fresh day in Christ, I get motivated. And but I'm very conscious of the fact that physically I'll start to get tired. In the late afternoon, I deal with fatigue. Always had hormonally fatigue. So I know nighttime's a little bit harder for me, but I'll think about it. I'll have it on my mind, and I'll know, so that if I'm just a little edgier at night, or not as patient, or if my cat jumps on me and claws me accidentally, but it hurts, it's like, so being aware. And then I was bringing up just, your encouragement since the day we met several years ago was just taking care of my health. Yes, I was taking care of my mental health by continuing my antidepressants, but also staying in touch with my therapist and my tribe, but also staying on top of my doctor's appointments, mammograms, everything. And excuse me. And so I feel good. I've gotten those over with. So I know if I'm doing good, doing better, I don't know what this right phrase would be, is if I'm caring enough about myself to take care of those. Now, I know that I say I do it for my mom, but I'm also doing it for me. Like, I had some stomach issues, and I was worried I had an ulcer. I ended up having a little hernia. Again, not uncommon for women my age as we start to gain a lot of weight in our midsection. So, but it wasn't anything serious, but it scared me because it just felt weird. There was one night it just really caused some spasms, and I was like, great, cancer.
So you went right for the big one.
Oh, of course. Come on, girl. And so, so I contacted her, and she was worried at first that it might be an ulcer, just nervously caring for Mom. But once we found out what it was, and it did not require surgery, I began making sensible decisions in taking care of my tummy, so I didn't have those issues that I was having before. So, am I honest in saying, am I doing it for me or for Mom? I'm doing it for both of us. But even before I was caring for Mom, I went to the doctor. I took care of my blood work. And so my hope is that I continue to do that when my mama passes.
You will. You will.
Then I'll know it was really for me, but it was really also for her as well.
Because then you know how important it is to take care of yourself. Because you've been through a journey, right? So, to caregivers out there, there's an honest part of this that this is challenging. It's difficult. I mean, I don't think there's a caregiver out there that could say that this was easy. I'm going to cough.
That's all right. Now, just think of how you and I would be coughing and sneezing if we were doing this out on the deck.
I know.
Which was so welcoming, but this pollen season would have choked us to death.
So, and I don't know if there is an expectation. So, as I talk to caregivers, always I don't know why, I just question it's hard. That's all I can say to a caregiver. This is challenging. And to expect anything else, if anybody else tell you anything different, they're not being honest. Right.
No, it is. And again, the hardest part for me is dealing with my own level of just getting older and dealing with health issues. And as we have been discussing, quite honestly, just depression and anxiety is when you're like that, what you want to do is just take the weekend, stay in bed, watch some golf, and just let God love on you, right? And maybe take that weekend, and you don't have to talk to anybody, you don't have to do anything, maybe go on a walk, but everything you're doing is to care for yourself. But you may not feel, but you can't escape into that fully. Because I think that is extremely important for people who deal with depression, is to take those days and be okay being down and just rest. But when you're caring for someone else and they're asking you questions and they need you to do this and you feel like you got to go do that, that's the hardest part.
I think there is, so I personally, I have to take a day quite often and disconnect, right? You hear so much, you're trying to figure out, you have to reset and recover emotionally, mentally. So take a day if possible. And like you said, let God love on you, let you love on yourself, just disconnect. But even research says, so this is important, as we grow older, isolation is not good for us. So think about does it cause depression? Is it a part of depression? But the more you isolate, the more depressed you become. Although on one hand, you need a certain amount of time to recover and take care of yourself. Solitude, serenity, and all of that. You can't stay there too long. And even with some of the research about Alzheimer's and depression and all of those things related to growing older, research says that having an active life, socialization, is so important to us.
Yeah.
So we got to keep that on the forefront of our minds as well.
Yeah, and both my parents were reclusive. Dad, because of his depression and anxiety, there were some things I was really proud that he did do. He got involved in theater, and of course he taught tennis, but he could teach tennis, stay engaged, do his thing, and then leave. He didn't last long in theater because that was too, it was not, even though I could tell he enjoyed the acting part, he still had to hang out with people. He just didn't do well with people. And to be honest, Mom has never really done well with people. And so she doesn't have any friends and hasn't had any friends for a long time. I've been her friend, and that is not good, but it is what it has been. And so, yeah, it's a head trip. It really can be. And that's why I'm grateful to have therapy, so I can just go and, like, next week I have an appointment and I'll just go and vomit all this stuff out, and I usually get some good encouragement without a doubt while I'm there, but just that release, because you can do it so much more grotesquely. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
you can. That's why they got tissue all throughout the doctor's office. But with your friends, you cry, but you hold it back a little.
And you don't want to tell them everything.
Well, you can't, right?
Yeah, you can't tell them everything.
Because at times you feel like a monster, the way your perspective of the world changes and people. And it's just, right now, probably the thing that, even though I know God is in control and He is going to, as He always has, take care of our financial needs, with the banking crisis right now, and everything else that's looming, I get anxious about, because there is going to be a time I'm going to have to hire help, and that's expensive. So I'm going to be dipping into my savings for that, because Mom just doesn't have that kind of money. And so, you have to, like you just said, you got to be careful what you listen to. So I try to stay on top of things, but if I hear someone specifically talking about the crisis in a way that overwhelms me, I just got to turn it off. Yeah. I know it's his opinion and his perspective. And of course, they've been talking about this crisis for 6 months now, and they always act like it's going to happen the next day, and it doesn't. I mean, I understand that, yes, there is a crisis at hand, but if you really listen to them, it's imminent.
Yes.
Overnight, tomorrow, that's it. We're all going to be eating cans of food, and it's just, so I'm always thinking about that. How am I going to financially care for us? And then I just got to shake it off and just go, wait, you have provided for us, and Mom and I in particular, because we've shared so much of our life together forever. You've been our husband, you've been our father, you've been our provider, you've been our counselor. So, but when you're tired and you're dealing with anxiety,
and
God
everything
seems really far away all of a sudden. And that's what I mean. I've got to start clinging back, like cling back to the truth of what I know is true. It's just really hard to get there when you're feeling worn out.
So it's just a true part of caregiving, right? And I talk to a lot of caregivers, and of course, I find when I have really intimate conversations with caregivers, I find out caregiving really becomes really about you. You find out a lot of stuff about you, like things you didn't really want to know about you, I think. And even like you kind of touched on about the dynamics of your relationship. And it really can become an opportunity to heal in some points. But like you said, you're not going to get from your loved one the response,
The resolution
of certain things. However, it will bring to the forefront, and you can find a way to manage, deal, and heal from those things. And I think that's one of the most amazing things about this disease is I never realized it becomes more than about the disease. And I think that's one of the hardest things, because people, we're really kind of, if it was just about bathing and changing the task, we could handle that.
Yeah.
But it messes with things we don't want to be bothered with, and that's the emotional part.
Yeah, I think when you and I met, I was perplexed. I remember I sat and had dinner with a friend, and I was perplexed why I didn't feel good, like why I was not handling it, because I was thinking of it like a task. I had positioned everything that I thought I could and knew how. Like when I moved Dad here, both my parents were diagnosed at the same time. Dad had the more aggressive dementia Lewy body, and I put him in an apartment just up the street, real close. So when I left for work, I could go by and visit. And when I came home, I could go, if he needed me right away. And then when I went shopping, food shopping, I shopped for both of them. I could go by, dump the, I thought I had the tasks down, and I did. And I had the financial stuff in place because I had friends immediately tell me what to do. I felt good about so many things until part of my caregiving testimony is that I was shopping at Kroger, and I actually had a therapy appointment that evening, I think, but I couldn't move. I stood it seemed like I stood in the cereal box aisle for 30 minutes. It was probably just 10, but it felt like forever. And I caught myself realizing that I wasn't even picking out any cereal, but I felt real stuck. And I thought, I don't want to go home. And I can't run away. Oh my, I'm in trouble. Emotionally, I knew I was in trouble. It had taken its toll on me. I was going to work and taking care of them, boom, boom, boom. But the emotional, first of all, moving my dad here was very triggering because all of a sudden he was a dynamic within this household again. Mom, even though she was acting like she was okay with it because they've never been not friendly, it was triggering for her. Triggers were coming out all over the place. I didn't understand what they were until my therapist started walking me through it. So they surprised me, and I was becoming disillusioned and just really fraught with fear. Again, grateful that I had a therapist at that time to kind of help me with some tools of dealing with triggers of family dynamics. And that's when I realized, wow, those things just don't go away.
They don't.
Certain things, I'd have my dad come over and visit. And like I said, Mom was fine. Well, of course your dad can come over. And again, we'd been on family trips even when through their divorce. But boy, Dad or Mom would say a certain thing maybe to each other, or it was just odd. And he'd come in for dinner or whatever, and my mom was acting so bizarre. And here she was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, so she didn't know what was happening. She didn't understand she was being triggered. So finally it got to, my brother and I talked about it, and I was like, God, I don't think I can have Dad down here anymore. Even though she acts like she's fine with it, she gets really physically sick when he's here. She goes, I don't feel well. I need to go lay down. And then she bounced back and come back in, but it was a weird deal. So, again, so I just realized, wow, that it is not, just as you said, task-oriented. There is a bubbling up. So not only are you dealing with the loss of a life that was, even if you had some issues, now you're grieving what's happening. The hardest part was, and I think I've always felt this way, like I didn't have a voice as a kid. And then you really don't have a voice when you are dealing with parental units, and so that have Alzheimer's. And so you feel, I guess the best word at the time, and still today, sometimes feel very helpless. Yeah.
So you you figure out how to take care of yourself. So I think, because we could be here all day, kind of wrap this up, is you talked about being aware a lot. I heard that a lot. Taking time to be aware of the progression, aware of your own emotions, processing things, crying when you need to cry, leaning on your faith, leaning on your tribe. So we have to have ways to take care of ourselves. And again, I go back to, I have learned the most, if anything, that through caregiving, and this disease particularly, because it's cognitive, I believe, I would say, is that it takes a lot out emotionally on caregivers, especially, the dynamics of it, and you won't get a resolve, right? You can't go back and the ability to go back and talk about maybe what happened, because it's not there in the ability. So, but you as the caregiver, in your role, the daughter, now the caregiver, you're not going to resolve it. They may not even remember, or it's not going to be the same. And true with spouses, a lot of times spouses have a lot of dynamics,
for sure.
Right, that has happened throughout the marriage. But they stay together, but there are some things that come up that happened years ago, and you still have to go through this. So learning to take care of yourself emotionally and mentally is so important.
It's important, and it's hard to navigate. But I think when you're sitting there talking, I just realized, as long as you're aware and you're trying, sometimes that's what I just want to shout. I'm doing the best I can.
But you're doing the best. So here's the thing. I always say, you're doing your best. You're not trying to do your best. You're actually doing your best.
Yeah,
At the moment,
good point.
You're doing your best.
Yeah.
You can't compare what you would feel like yesterday or maybe tomorrow. At the moment, you're doing the best you can.
That's right. Yeah, and some days are better. In every aspect of life, yes. And I think that when I realize that, because back in the day, when my mother and I could fight, we went to bed mad, right? And so I think it's such a success now. First of all, she wouldn't be aware of what we were fighting about if we were fighting. But when my mom can go to bed feeling safe and happy and loved and wake up that way, then I've done a good job. I've done my best, as you said. Not trying, I've done my best.
Absolutely.
In spite of the the challenges of just navigating my own getting older and dealing with the fact that I just can't juggle as much as I used to. I certainly can't handle as much news as I used to. That's for sure. But yeah, so I sure love you and appreciate you, and you're perfect for the job that you do, Carolyn, because you really do. I forget sometimes that the goal of where you work is to care for the caregivers, but I've been more aware of it the last couple of days, especially how sweet of you in the email to say, I want to find out how you're doing. It reminded me, first of all, that I'm not alone, and then it reminded me that when things do get more dicey, changes do happen. Mm-hmm. I've got you, I've got David Cook, I've got so many people that I can lean on and say, okay, I'm throwing the towel at this moment because I don't know what to do.
So one of the great things I love about my job, and I'm going to put a plug in for Alzheimer's Arkansas right now and what I do. So I take phone calls literally 24 hours a day, but we have a phone line. I take emails. You can walk in my office. And the great thing about a phone call is, unless I know your voice, but even if I know your voice, it really does not. It's a no judgment zone. I've had people, if you tell me, Theba, you don't want to do it, you can't do it today, I get you. Mm-hmm. I know it's for the moment. You need to say it. But if you tell your brother you can't do it, you don't want to do it again, he takes that literally, right? And he's going to pass out and like, Theba, you can't, what do you mean? So people have told me everything, and every time I think I've heard everything, I hear another everything. So it really is a no judgment zone. You can tell me you're going to throw in the towel, and I'm not going to be the person that is going to cause anxiety in your life when you make that decision.
Right.
I'm going to listen to you and help you process why you even said it, or what are you thinking? Because sometimes you just need to say things.
Right.
So that's a great part of what I'm able to do. Sometimes we just need to say things.
Yeah.
And I'm not just...
And not be so afraid.
And not be so afraid to say it.
And you'd be proud. Not that I did it so you'd be proud, but I know you'll be proud. But I had to... we can't just assume other people understand or know. That is not fair to them or yourself. So just recently, I had to be more honest with my brother. He lives far away, and we've not lived in the same town for a long time. So a lot of our correspondence is phone calls mm-hmm. and a text. But I was afraid to let him know about how my anxiety was right there. I don't want him to feel responsible for it. That's not the point anyway, right? Mm-hmm. He wouldn't, and I wasn't asking him for anything, but I just had to let him know. I've always tried to be the sister, if not the daughter, who had her crap together. It's not as if they didn't know I dealt with depression. Mom's always been in denial about it. Dad understood it because he knew I would have it because he had it, that kind of crap. My brother's always known, but I felt like I needed to reiterate because I was not doing well and I wasn't being myself, and I was acting out in certain ways and because of how I felt. So finally today I just sent him a text and just said, this is how I am right now, and this is how I'm feeling, and I got a beautiful text back from him. And again, no one died. No one got mad at each other, mm-hmm. but I just had to say, God, and I didn't try to blame it on anything. I just was real, like I'm real with you guys right now. I know I'm older. My hormones are all whacked. I'm trying to get those under control. And I know that even my depression and anxiety at this age is different. Mm-hmm. I have to adjust to that, figure out the best path forward. But I have to be okay. It has to, and as he said back in his text, we have to have a safe zone to say these things to each other.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, but to getting there, we had a moment, a brother-sister moment, where we were both got into it with each other, and we knew it wasn't about that. We just knew it was about the past and what we're going through as we're getting older now, that sort of thing. So we both needed a few days to process and kind of give each other space. And so then finally today I went on my walk, and I didn't feel as vulnerable yesterday. I just felt like if anybody had looked at me sideways, I would have crumbled yesterday. So I didn't want to say anything then, because what if I sent an email or a text like that yesterday and I didn't get a favorable response? I would have been broken, shattered. And so I went on my walk, and I thought, all right, let's try this out. And so I sent him a text and got a really sweet text back, because ultimately Mike and I know that it's just about life, and but we tend to lash out at the people closest to us, and I can't lash out at my mama, and I couldn't lash out at my daddy. When I was upset about something, and they have every right to lash out at us because they don't even know what they're doing. So anyway, that was, I'm going to sleep better tonight just knowing that we made that connection, because he's the only family I have left.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot's going on in this world, and it's affecting everyone ever since COVID. I mean, I had my girlfriends on the back of the porch after our walk yesterday, and we were just talking, and one of them said, everything's just been different since COVID. Everyone knows it's different. It's like, our approaches, our connections with people, our interactions out there in the world are so tempered with, and it's just weird. So it's going to have an effect also on what we're doing if we're raising children or whatever, caring for our parents. So I appreciate you so much.
I appreciate you too, and the platform you've provided for so many others. Just being real is important.
Oh, thank
Being
you.
real.